June Clausen and I, Brian Walters, got married straight out of college after 3 years of a deal, although we graduated the same year. I was 3 years older than June, as my parents had taken me out of preschool, and I served 2 years in the Peace Corps before enrolling in college. Both our families were pleased with our choice of partner, but it was perhaps my mother-in-law, Cheryl, who was the happiest cherry, was particularly happy because she seemed to like me and my relationship with June, as well as our engagement. The wedding planning and marriage allowed her to live vicariously through June, as she had never had that experience herself. Cheryl became pregnant as a teenager and struggled to cope as a single mother, largely because her strictly religious parents virtually disowned her. After a few years of struggle, she married a much older man at the age of 21 in order to gain financial security and provide for June. Carol has never had a romance of a fulfilled engagement or even anything more than a modest marriage, as her husband Sam Clausen had been married before and preferred something simple. Sam is a good man, and he has provided for both Cheryl and June well, but he is very ordinary and has no sense of romance. I have always liked Cheryl, as she is only 11 years older than me. I don't see her as a typical mother-in-law, but more like a young Anne. In fact, she is as beautiful as her daughter, although she is 2 inches shorter than June. She has green eyes instead of blue and is not as voluptuous. Her beautiful face usually has a bright smile, and she is very kind for someone as pretty as her. She is shy and always wears conservative clothes. Perhaps rooted in this is because of her past, especially the fact that her parents don't stop treating her in such unkind terms. June and I had been married for 4 years when Sam died of a heart attack. It wasn't really unexpected given his lifestyle, but Cherry took it very hard. I handled all the estate matters for Cherry. I gave her a shoulder to cry on more than June. I included her in our activities so that, combined with the charity work she was doing, she would stay busy. One thing she didn't want help with or even talk about was her love life. Dozens of men I knew, some much younger than her, would have liked to date her, but she wasn't interested in them at all. Shortly after my 6th wedding anniversary, I realized I was a clueless husband cheated on by an woman. I may have been clueless, but I wasn't indecisive. When June's infidelity was confirmed, I moved out of our apartment into a motel, and I immediately split all our finances. I think June really loved me, but had lost her way and didn't consider a short-term affair with someone she supposedly had no emotional attachment to serious. She accused me of overreacting. I know June confided in Cherry. I never called her mom or anything like that, just Cheryl, and asked her to intercede on her behalf. I know this because 3 nights after we moved out of our apartment, Cheryl visited me at the motel I was staying at. When she knocked on the door, I was surprised to see her, but considering how kind she had always been to me and how much I cared for her, I didn't want to deny her entry. We sat there next to each other on the couch in my hotel room, and she took my hand. "I'm so sorry, Brian. I think you know I didn't raise June that way." "I know, Cheryl," I replied, shaking her hand. "You have always impressed me as a moral person who has overcome life's obstacles. And June's actions have nothing to do with you. How are you holding up?" She asked, a small tear, and when "I'm fine," it was a shock, but I've never been indecisive. So I took the bull by the horns and moved out. I'll probably suffer for a while, but I'll get over it. Idrek, is there any chance you could forgive June and take her back? I do, and see how, especially since she thinks I'm overreacting. She didn't realize how much she hurt me, and I replied this time. A tear ran down my eye. We talked for an hour, not only about June, but other things as well. When she got up to leave, she hugged me longer than was appropriate considering she was still my mother-in-law, and after breaking off contact, she said seriously to me, staring into her eyes, "If you divorce June, I hope that doesn't mean you're divorcing me too, Cheryl. I will always have a soft spot in my heart for you." After Cherry left, I felt better while advocating for her daughter. She had acknowledged that I had the right to feel what I felt, didn't try to pressure me, and acted like a true friend rather than a stepmother. I actually felt better until I fell asleep that night. I woke up in a sweat after having a very, very inappropriate dream a week after we moved out of our apartment, and told the landlord I was no longer responsible for the rent. At the time, we were living at least month to month with no contractual liability. I filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences. June was very upset I didn't understand why she was so upset what did. She think I would do she had known me for 9 years at that point, and I had never given her a false impression of myself June, and her lawyer tried many tactics, including seeking psychological help so things didn't go 100. During the first 3 months during this period, I was still a bit shocked, but I didn't break my principles. I probably would have taken it worse if it wasn't for the fact that 2 of my single male friends took it upon themselves to cheer me up, and Cheryl would call me every week, not just to check on me, although she always expressed concern, but to tell me uplifting stories, most of the time as part of her rewarding charitable activities. We also had lunch once a month, and she was always upbeat on those occasions after the papers were filed. For about 3 months on a Monday, at about 1 p.m., we had a preliminary hearing before a magistrate. June argued her case for the council, but my solicitor managed to refute it by showing pictures of June going to lunch with George, the colleague she had had an affair with at least twice since the divorce papers were filed, although she had loudly proclaimed and tear that she had had no contact with him since I left. The fact that she had not distanced herself from him, the magistrate, at the request of my lawyer, denied her request for court-ordered psychological assistance. Everyone present at the hearing knew that this was probably the final step towards the end of the marriage, which would probably end in 3 months Tuesday at work. Cherry called it was unusual for her to call me at work, but I was always happy to hear from her. After an initial friendly exchange, she got to the heart of the matter. You probably know, Brian, that June called me after the hearing yesterday, quite upset by the fact that the divorce will be finalized in a few months. Is that your opinion, too? Yes, Cheryl, I am very sad, but I have to move on. My lawyer thinks that we will be able to handle all the financial matters properly so that the final judgment should be rendered in about 3 months. I thought you were feeling bad, so let me take you out to dinner on Friday. Would you mind going to dinner with your future ex-mother? Isn't it? If you're embarrassed, I can wear a mask. I couldn't help but chuckle. No, it wouldn't be embarrassing. And no, you don't need to wear a mask. It's just that I don't think I'm very good company. I'll give you some good food, and you'll feel better. I know you're not a great cook. What time should I pick you up on Friday? As not being a great cook was an understatement, I replied, laughing. I'll pick you up, or I'll meet you at the restaurant. Absolutely not. Since I'm the one treating you, no discussion. I'll pick you up, let's say, at 7 p.m. Okay, it's 7 a.m. I'll give you the address of my new apartment. I had another very disturbing dream on Tuesday night. I was going to have to see a therapist if this continued, to my great surprise, when Cherry knocked on my apartment door at 7:02 p.m. on Friday night. She wasn't dressed in the conservative clothes she always wore. She was wearing a elegant neckline, a short skirt, 12-inch heels that matched her skirt light. Makeup. She hardly ever wears makeup, which highlighted her enchanting emerald eyes, and a new hairstyle that made her pretty face even more beautiful. She didn't look 43, but more like 30. Darling looks at me apprehensively. You dress nicely. And I say, when my jaw started working again, thank you, she replied, visibly relieved by my words. The restaurant is quite upscale, and I didn't want to look out of place. It's a new outfit. Yes, I bought it this week along with other similar clothes. I thought it was time I stopped wearing the tacky clothes I've always worn. Dear, he drove to the restaurant, which also happened to have a dance floor, unfortunately. While driving, her skirt rode up her thigh. I had never seen part of her thigh before, and I got chided thinking she looks shapely. The dinner was enjoyable, and Cherry's optimism was infectious, so much so that I almost forgot about my unpleasant divorce. It was unusual, however, for Cherry to drink so much alcohol. Normally, she only drinks 1 glass of wine. When she goes out to dinner that night, she bought a bottle to share, but as I rarely drink and only had 1 glass, she drank the rest after dinner. She lured me onto the dance floor. The only times I had danced with her was at June and I's wedding reception, and a few nights after Sam died, when June and I had taken him with us. She had declined many offers to dance from other men. At the time, she was a pretty basic and static dancer. Now, it was a firework after 6 or SEP dances. We took a break. She went to the bathroom, and I got a table. When she came back, I asked her, how did you learn to dance like that? I pride myself on being a good dancer for a man, but she was obviously better than me. I took lessons once a week for almost a year. She said, smiling, I did. Well, you were close to being the best dancer. You made frog eyes at quite a few guys. I said, laughing. Oh no, she said, blushing. Just then a guy came up to us and asked me if I minded if he danced with my date. A little taken aback, I realized that with the way Cherry looked, people could easily mistake her for my date. When I regained my composure, I said it's up to my mother-in-law to decide. He looked very confused. Cheryl gave me a P.O. punch in the arm and with a smile told the guy he's a real kid. However, since it's only our second date, I don't want to abandon him, especially since a hot young girl is going to catch him. So thank you so much for your invitation, but I decline. But if he dumps me, I'm sure I'll see you here again, she said, laughing, and putting her left hand on mine. The guy smiled, kissed her right hand, and walked away. I told him you're a little devil. I got you, she replied, just as a waiter came up to our table and placed what looked like a Bloody Marie in front of her and club soda in front of me. We didn't order, I started to say. When she interrupted me, I did as I came back from the bathroom. Now drink up, and then let's go back to the dance floor. I've never seen her drink hard liquor, but she quickly drank the Bloody Marie, and I finished the club soda. Then we went back to the dance floor. After CIN or so other dances, Cheryl leaned over to me and said, I think I've reached my limit, so for the alcohol, then for the dancing, can you walk me home? I really shouldn't be driving. I might be drunk, I don't know, because I've never been drunk before, but I definitely couldn't drive a car without hitting something. I picked up the car from the valet while Cherry went back to the bathroom. Then I headed to her house. She lived in a fancy little house in an upscale suburb. Sam had left her a large sum of money when he died, which was about 8 miles from my apartment. I could just take a cab or Uber home. Cherry was very talkative in the car, saying over and over I put it down to the alcohol, that she was hoping I would have a good time and forget about her cheating daughter for a while. When we got to her house, she fumbled with the garage keys. I opened it using the remote on her visor all the way to the kitchen. I took them from her. I opened the door, and I helped her in once inside. She closed the garage door and made a clear locking motion of the sleeping pen. Then she pulled something out of her purse and handed it to me. I took it off in the bathroom as a souvenir for you, she said. HRY hot. It was her panties. I'm sure I blushed, but it was nothing compared to the intensity of the red that must have followed. After she handed me her panties, I opened and closed my mouth silently. I was so stunned. Suddenly, she pulled her skirt down as I said, what are you? She ripped off her blouse, popping the buttons and revealing she had no bra underneath. I'm sure my face was crimson. Cherry came up to me, and while placing kisses on my shoulders, neck, and cheeks, she kept arming me. I don't think I remember or understand all the words she arming me, but I remember some of them. I'm sure you haven't had sex in months, and you need someone to help you. I'm just as impatient as you are. I've been frustrated for decades, and I need you to do something about it. Pretend I'm just someone I met at a bar and not your mother-in-law, as she said. Hers. My mind kept going back to the 2 dreams that had been troubling me so much the last few days. In those dreams, I was the intimate one with Cherry. In that fantasy, her appearance was only half of what she was in reality. When Cherry put his hands on me, I lost control. As I carried her to her bedroom, I remember the first thought that came to my mind was that I would really regret this in the morning. However, I was sure that at least a part of me would regret it tonight when we were finally together. Cherry, he reacted like someone who had never experienced that kind of closeness before. I learned later that it was true. When we finally broke up, I was physically and emotionally exhausted. There was no way I was getting up and leaving despite those disturbing words, please stay tonight, Brian. I have never woken up with someone I care about. I thought, what does that mean? I had to put that sentence aside for now. When she laid her head on my shoulder, I quickly fell into a deep sleep. I know I had several dreams during the night. Usually I don't remember dreams, but this time I remembered them the next morning. In all those dreams, I was close to Cherry, where I shared a more tender moment. My last dream turned out to be reality. In the morning, I felt something next to me. I suddenly realized that it was reality and not a dream when my eyes opened, and I saw Cherry next to me. Although she is not very experienced, the tenderness she showed made all the difference. Once close, I gently repositioned her on the bed. I spent some time connecting intimately with her. Then we continued with a passionate intensity, sharing a deep and mutual desire. Cherry seemed to be experiencing waves of pleasure, her body reacting in a way that was beyond words. As our connection reached its peak, she seemed overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. She then turned to me, embraced me tenderly, and we shared a heartfelt kiss. We lay together side by side, content in the tranquility that followed. Thank you for the best night and morning of my life. Cherry set her green eyes, staring into mine with an almost hypnotic intensity. Is this an alternate reality, or does someone like you give me such an incredible experience? And thank me then. I laughed. Am I really? Or that attractive hitchy? Of course am I laughing? We had a nice conversation on the pillow, even though I couldn't shake the complexity of the situation. She ended the conversation with a smile, suggesting let's take a shower together, followed by a quick kiss. I replied, that's great. But before I could get up, she held me back, eyes shining, saying, I'm sorry. I told you I loved you despite the whirlwind of emotion. Processing her confession and my own feelings, we managed to enjoy our time in the shower. It was a new experience for her, and she was as enthusiastic and playful as could be, reveling in the shared intimacy. Cheryl put on a short bathrobe to prepare breakfast, frowning with a satisfied smile. We had a pleasant conversation over breakfast, although I had a hard time keeping my thoughts entirely innocent. As she was radiant, I couldn't help but notice her happiness, perhaps the greatest I've ever seen her apart from my marriage to June. After breakfast, I insisted on she knew while I was doing the dishes. She put on a pair of denim shorts and a casual blouse. Still so young, and her looks have always appealed to me. She led me to my apartment, and once there she asked me, would you mind showing me your apartment? I've never seen it. I told her, of course. As I was showing her around, she seemed a little nervous, but it wasn't until we got to my bedroom that she stopped putting her hands on my chest. Brian, would you like to make love to me in your bed? She asked me softly, her vulnerability and sweetness causing an instinctive reaction in me. The connection we had shared, rather combined with the emotions we were both feeling, made the moment electric with anticipation.